Hello. Hello. Happy Sunday. Welcome back. I think the last book club we did was maybe June with Elizabeth, if that's right. It has been some time. Don't mind Sunday crying now that I'm talking to the camera. She'll be back. I guess I should address the fact I chopped my hair. Thank you for noticing. It is super short. I just thought it would be something fun. And I don't think you've seen it. So my hair is short. I'm wearing Sid's You Like Jazz merch. And we are here back in book club at last to discuss family lore. And I know that I have like several book club live streams that are super delayed that have been like kind of sporadically thrown onto Sunday afternoons. So if you are finding this later, hello, welcome. Let me know what you thought of family lore. And if you are here now, hello, welcome. Let me know what you thought about family lore. I listened to family lore on audio as it was narrated by Elizabeth Acevedo. The other book I've read of hers was Clap When You Land, which I believe was written in prose and is also narrated by the author. So I knew that I would want to listen to it again since it was narrated herself. Like, what better way to enjoy someone's art, like from their own self, you know? And she's just such a good, like, quite literal storyteller. Like her voice, her acting, her emotion, I very much loved. The audiobook experience like I did before. Like overall story-wise, I have a lot of mixed thoughts, but we can kind of unpack as we go through. I did pull up some reviews that we can kind of go over together, but I ended up giving Family Lore a 3 stars, which I think might be closer to like a 3.5. But I would love to know what anyone else rated it. I read it over the course of 2 or 3 weeks on like my daily commute, and it was so nice to be kept company by the women in this family, slowly unfolding the mystery and the magical realism powers of all of the women. Just kind of like slowly learning and absorbing as we went through the story. I very thoroughly enjoyed getting to know all of the history and all of the background of all of the different people. Family lore, to give like a little brief overview, is about these women who each kind of have this like surreal power in like the women's line of their families. And one of those women, Flor, can predict through these dreams to the day when someone will die. And sometimes she has other kind of prophetic dreams as well, but especially, I mean, everyone in her family knows that if Flor has a dream about someone dying, it's to be trusted. And so the book opens with Flor telling her family, "Hey, I would like to have a living wake for myself." And the family is like, "Why? Did you have a dream? Is someone dying? Are you dying? What's going on?" And she's being super secretive about it. She's like, "No, we just need to get everyone together and have a living wake for myself, for Flor." And so the rest of the book is like the few days leading up to the living wake. And also there are frequent like flashbacks and kind of like historical inserts of the kind of older history of the family, both from like time in the Dominican Republic and also from the time that members of the family have lived in New York, and back and forth and back and forth. And they're like getting used to the story. There was kind of like, where are we and whose story are we? And having them kind of each tied to their powers and the other people in their lives and their loved ones helped, I felt, to really ground in like whose story I'm in, whose life are we hearing about, like whose lessons are we unpacking? Because even though I read it, I guess slowly over the course of a few weeks, it is such a short timeline, which is not something that I always love. I know that I usually struggle with a super short timeline like this of being, I want to say it's like 2 or 3 days leading up to this living wake. Excuse me. So I don't know, it was nice to have it broken up with, like, the other flashbacks and kind of this history from some of the other family members, but, I felt like it was very organically laid out of, like, all of the events happening, but still not my favorite, like, super short lead up, and I didn't really we're not gonna get into spoilers yet, but I didn't feel like the really short 3 days added too much to the structure of the story. I didn't feel like it needed to be just 3 days before the living wake. So I mean, it was an intentional choice, but not one that I felt like was like really served the story. I guess on just like a structure craft note, but I did enjoy the events kind of as they unfolded. There were some moments that I could have done without, but there were also some really beautiful moments between the family members and the sisters especially. So Floor is one of 4 sisters in this kind of magical realism family. And her other sisters, her oldest sister Matilde is she has this husband and everyone has opinions on her husband, and she feels like she's the only one of the bunch that doesn't really have a power, but she loves to dance. And so we see Matilde often dancing or in a dance class, or talking about dancing with her family members, and she is very much like the sweet angel of the family, like wouldn't hurt a fly, could do no wrong, always sees the best in everyone, gives everyone the benefit of the doubt. Then we see Floor, who is this kind of she comes across as this like cozy grandma in the book, and she's has this like mysterious power where she has these dreams and she could tell when someone will die, and she just is very keeps things very close to the chest, but is just happy to be around her family and be around her loved ones and see things unfold as they do. And she is very close to the next youngest sister, Pastora, and Pastora has the ability to sense the truth in a statement that anyone says. So she can tell if you're lying, but she can also kind of sense the underlying, more nuanced emotions within someone's words, where she ends up working at this not consignment store, just like a retail clothing store, where like women come in and will tell her the reasons for why they're shopping for clothes, and she becomes really good at her job over the years and years and years working there because she can sense underlying the reasons what these women are really searching for. How can she best sell them the clothing items that would actually serve what maybe they're not saying out loud. The youngest sister is far younger than the older 3. Her name's Camila, and she spends a lot of time like, the scenes that stick out to me most are the scenes where she's at this hotel in the Dominican Republic still, and a lot of it is through, like, flashbacks from the other family members, but she ends up having this, like, very lush and luxurious life of wealth, that the other sisters kind of I don't know if they are keeping distance from her or if they are, like harboring other thoughts about her, but she very much feels like, or it comes across in the book that she kind of feels like the odd duck a lot of times. And the other thing about the 4 sisters, it said several times, is that they feel like instead of a sisterhood of 4, they are a sisterhood of 2 and 2. That Flora and Pastora are super close to each other, and Camila and Matilde are really close to each other. And sometimes kind of the 2 pairs almost like team up against each other, or they have those kind of those closeness allyships within their sisterhood of the 4 of them. But really, like Camila and Matilde will often have scenes and conversations together and talk about Flora and Pastora and vice versa. Like Flora and Pastora have this like very close, deep bond and history together, and they will often have scenes together and talk about the other 2 sisters. So it was a really interesting dynamic. I don't have any sisters, and I really haven't had that like close bond with like women my age in my family. So it just was like not something I was entirely familiar with to have like, oh yes, like let me go talk to my sister about that. Let me go talk to my cousin about that. Um, Speaking of which, there are like the next generation below the 4 sisters. We have 2 cousins, Yadi and Ona, who each have their own very interesting powers as well. And they, while cousins, kind of behave like sisters, probably from the model of their mothers and their aunts. They have this deep bond and deep closeness, and they are also all speculating on what's going on with Flora, why are we having this wake, etc., etc. So that's, I would say, like, the six main characters is the four sisters, the two younger cousins and daughters, and there's also a little bit, going back to Mama Cecilia, who is the mother of the 4 sisters, and what her power was, and then when she passes, her gift, her power passes to one of the cousins. So I won't say much more than that, you know, to avoid spoilers. But my overall thoughts, this will probably be a brief book club. This is just me really rambling. My overall thoughts on family lore. What a beautiful story, so beautifully written. The, like, richness and the detail and, like, the family relationships and how it's never so simple. You love your family, they're your family, but there is a lot of complicated things going on all the time, even with the people that you love the most. Like, the family dynamics, I think, were the strongest part of this book. The sister dynamics, strongest part of this book. What I just didn't feel like the the way that the story unfolded with the wake and the ending and all of the sisters' character arcs. I didn't feel like we got quite enough resolution or closure, I guess you could say. I felt like some of the characters remained pretty flat over the course of the story, and to have a character-driven story like this, which I feel like it absolutely was, the really only plot driver is, this living wake is happening. Everything outside of that is just these kind of six main characters moving through their lives as this wake approaches. It's almost entirely a character story, and some of the characters I feel like we got to know really, really well. Some of them not so much, and some of them, like, I just feel like we didn't really go anywhere. And maybe it was just that some of them were there to be more supporting roles or contextual roles for some of the other characters. But we had, like, point of view chapters from each of these six women over the course of the story, kind of back and forth on each of these six. And I just, like, in particular, I think Pastora and Matilde, I feel like, grew the most and went through the most change by the end of the story, and it was because they kind of have their storyline intertwined part of the way through, relating to Matilda's husband and what he gets up to, and that kind of bleeds over into Pastora's world maybe 2/3 of the way through the book. And I felt like the way that that storyline ended was very satisfactory, but the rest of the characters, I don't know. The way that Flora's story ended, I did feel closure there, but it's still, what, I don't know. I felt like Flor, for it being her wake and her dream that kind of kicks everything off, I feel like Flor is the character out of everyone that we get to know the least, which is interesting, is maybe she is just kind of raising up and creating this space for all of her family to shine around her, which was kind of her idea of this living wake, is like, I want to have a living wake. You don't get to ask any questions about it, but I just know that I want this opportunity to bring all of my family together again around me, because I love all of you people. I want all of you to be there around me. And she is this almost mirror to her sisters and to her daughter and to the other cousins, the other family members, that when Flor is around, people seem, I guess, a little bit more soft. Oh, they speak a little bit kinder to each other. Everyone is very aware when Flor is around, when Flor is there. And maybe it's like, this lady could tell us terrible news and we would know it was true. So I feel like there's a little bit of walking on eggshells around Flor, with the exception of Pastora, but that also has the effect of, like, she has this kind of gentleness effect at the same time. So I don't know, other than that, other than it being her living wake and it's her vision that she won't tell anyone about. Um, I don't feel like we got to know a lot about her except through the eyes of the other sisters. Then the cousins, Ona and Yadi, we know a lot about each of them. We know a lot about their careers, their powers. One of them, it becomes like an amazing cook, which is like an inherited gift and is centered around this like voracious taste for limes. And she puts limes in so many things as part of her craft and her business. And the other's power has to do with like literally her vagina and her, she's convinced that I mean, it's not convinced, that is what her power is that she has this like sensuality that she is very, very attuned to. And it creates some really, really bizarre scenes, but it just works. Like there's so many bizarre moments that you just get kind of used to it, and just take it for what it is by the end of the story, really. But I felt like Yadi and Ona have this sisterhood within themselves, and their relationships, their careers, they are going through things. There is plenty for them to be fleshing out over the course of the story, things they struggle with, these complicated family issues that they're unpacking on page. I don't know how to describe it, but I'll have to talk to some friends that I know have read it too, because there's just, I felt like it was building towards something, and I don't feel like either of the cousins really had this great resolution to the story. And it's those two in particular, Yadi and Ona, are like the future of the family. Like they will be passing down perhaps their powers, and literally the family lore, rests on those two. So I would have expected that they would have had the most growth, the most development over the course of the story. And I just didn't quite feel that or reach that point. I could have used like one more chapter from each of them to kind of wrap things up, but I just don't think that is Elizabeth Acevedo's style. So I mean, it's up in the air. I think I could benefit from a reread. I mean, I only finished this a few days ago, and I already am thinking like, I wish that I could dive deeper into Camila's story. I bet if I read it again, I would find XYZ, and I could, make assumptions and draw conclusions if I had read it a little bit more deeply or a second time. Same goes for Pastora, same goes for Floor. Like I would love to just reread and dive into a little bit more kind of this like quiet side and the nuance of Floor's character, knowing how her story ends as well. So I guess I have mixed feelings about it, like I said, but an enjoyable read. What a great time to listen to Elizabeth Acevedo tell this story in her own voice. I'm so thrilled that she wrote this for an adult audience. I would be so excited to see what she writes next for like an adult audience, or if she goes back to YA. I don't know. I still haven't read With the Fire on High. Is I think the one I'm missing from her repertoire. But Family Lore was a hit for me, but it didn't blow my socks off, I guess. But I will be absolutely excited to see whatever comes next. The themes of the story, if I was going to recommend to someone, is gosh, family, legacy, um, sisterhood, like finding magic in the mundane almost. Like most of these women, while they all have their surreal gifts, a lot of them have to do with looking closer at things or giving special attention to things, trusting in things. Like I feel like there is this element of the book that's just saying like, look a little deeper, take your time, unpack things a little bit extra. Like all of these women have such storied backgrounds as we learn through the course of these like histories and flashbacks. Not flashbacks, there's just chapters that happen in the past. But they all have such interesting and separate lives, but are richer while being told together. And one of the cousins is working on like a research paper or book or something where there are these chapters that are like interview transcripts of the other family members. And that I think is like the future of the family is like telling the legacy, sharing their family lore, and what does it all mean? What is the sum of their parts? Like we are greater for being together. Our story is greater for telling it all together. It is richer, looking at everyone and how we all interact together rather than just Camila's story or just Pastora's story, etc. So I loved how many main characters they were. I loved all of the women in the story. I just wish we'd gotten a little bit more closure. And I just read another book too, where it was similar. It was like the characters were so rich and well written. I just wish we'd had a little bit more at the end. But overall, what a great time. Huge fan of Elizabeth Acevedo. And again, I will be so excited to see whatever she cooks up next. But I think that's going to do it for my stream of consciousness thoughts and ramblings on family lore. Thank you for being here. Thank you for reading with Silly Goose Book Club. I'm so sorry that it took me as long as it did to get back into the swing of regular like book club live shows. It has been a couple months, okay? Quite literally. I'm still getting used to my hair also. But it's been a lot in my personal life, and I'm just excited to be slowly getting back into being on YouTube. So I'm happy to have you here. Thank you for sticking it out and reading with me as always. I really appreciate it. And I hope to see you again soon. If you're here in real time, in about 30 minutes, I'll be doing a second live stream again, catching up on book clubs. But I will be with my friend Sarah from Sarah's Shelves. We'll be discussing The Center, which was our October read. Family Lore was September. The Center by Aisha Monazir Siddiqui, which was a dark academia debut. Not that you're going to have time to read it in 30 minutes, obviously. But if you're here and you want to be back for more live shows, that's where I will be. Otherwise, obviously, you can feel free to read any of these books at any point in book club, and the live shows will always be around. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you are having a fabulous Sunday or whatever day this is when you are watching this. Please let me know what you thought of family lore. And I will see you very soon. Okay, love you, bye.